Hello, everyone. This is the Lemon Narrative. I'm Sabrina, your host, and as you know, I'm interested in the human experience. And today, I have someone I just recently met, but I felt like I met a soulmate on some level. So I'm very, very excited. It's not just because we're Sudanese; it's because we think the same when it comes to the Sudani experience. So, Roua, introduce yourself to the audience, please.
Hi, my name is Roua. Thank you so much. I'm so excited to be on the podcast. I haven't really put a definition on what I'm doing yet, but I would call myself an inspiring writer or aspiring to be a writer in the making. And I am currently hoping to kind of infuse the Sudanese experience with a lot of the work that I do and the things that I am writing and creating. And just so far, it's been just kind of like a way of expressing myself and who I am.
Expressing and discovering your identity as well, right?
Yeah.
Because as you write, you're like, oh, I didn't know about this. I didn't know. And you're writing things, and then you remember a memory, and you connect the memory to something that you have right now as a person, right? And you're like, oh, is this why I do this? Is this why I don't like this? I like this food, and I like this food. Is this why I'm not a sweet person, I'm a sour person? You know what I mean? I love this. I didn't know you were writing. What kind of writing you're doing? Is it books, poetry? What are you doing?
So it's literally a little bit of everything. I haven't really found a mode just yet that I could kind of like fit in. I did start since I was a kid. I used to always write poetry, so that was kind of like my way. And then it turned into slam poetry for a while, and then I stopped for a really long time. And then I used to do also short stories growing up, but it was only like a couple. And then now I'm trying to write a book. So that has been kind of like, all right, I want to dive into the deep end. And so that's kind of what I'm working towards.
Oh, look, this is our connection, because I did start with short stories when I was like in elementary school, and probably most of them were like simulation to what I was reading, right? And then I went into poetry, and I was just going through my poetry notes, and I was like, oh my god, damn, I was writing a lot. I wrote that many. I didn't know. I thought like I'm like not that kind of poet, etc. But then I realized, oh my god, I have a lot of poems. And right now I'm actually writing a book. So you know what I mean? Like the connection. Yeah. Oh gosh, I told you, soulmates on another level. Here. Great. I love this. We'll talk about the book and what you're writing and everything. But let's start with the main question for the Lemon Narrative, which is a screenwriter. As you know, I love screenwriting as well. If I'm writing a feature film about you, what would be the first scene you want your audience to see in your film?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I've been thinking a lot about it. It was really hard to make a decision, I have to say. Because I was like, oh, do I want to go back to like 5 years old? It's like, oh, that's way too back. Maybe like high school. So I was kind of all over the place with it. But I would say one thing that is very relevant to me right now would be somewhere around high school. That's kind of like very a situation where I was in my second year of high school. So I was in a different middle school, and then by the time I went into high school, it was a completely different just environment for me. I was in an English private school before, and then I went into a public school, but I was still studying in English. So that first year was a lot of adjustment. But the second year of my high school, it was kind of like, okay, I knew what was going on. I was super excited. I loved school. I loved going to school. I loved meeting my friends. And I feel like the opening scene would be the first day of high school, because I remember going into class and everyone's just excited to see each other and whatnot. And I remember we had a class teacher, right? The one who would be like the representative of us. And she came in,
like a homeroom teacher, right?
Yes, like a homeroom teacher. Yeah, exactly. And she came in, and I remember she gave in a spiel of like, okay, guys, like this is your second year. The first year you were all over the place, you know, and we were all testing out things. And I think this year it's time to kind of like mature a little bit and be more
Responsible.
Yeah, responsible. And I remember after that, like, she made a comment to me specifically because I ended my first year with a really big prank, that was on the last day, and it was supposed to just be like, oh, all fun and games, whatever. But
Yeah.
it kind of like did not turn out like that. It turned out so interestingly, like the parents were involved, and it dragged out a little bit in the summer. It was kind of really awkward, but I have no regrets.
Where did this happen? Like, you didn't mention location. Was this in Sudan
No,
or
yeah.
US?
So I was born and raised in Sudan. So this is all in Sudan. So until I finished high school, that was all in Sudan.
And which part of Sudan? Do you mind mentioning the part?
I was born and raised in the capital, in Khartoum.
In Khartoum. Okay, so you went from this high school to the. Oh wow, you did a prank, and the parents were involved. What happened in Sudan? Now, okay, I need to know the details, please. Like, if you can, I need to know the prank. What did you do?
I completely forgot. I did not think that this is okay, so
you watch the podcast. I do ask questions.
So the prank was, so we were in KIPS, and I don't know if you've heard about KIPS, but it was a separate high school where, not just high school, it's like middle school, high school, girls and boys, but they were right in front of each other, and sometimes we would cross over to the other school for specific activities, to the main school, and then the girls' school was a newer school that was right across the street. And for that specific school, we had our own principal, and they're all women, and it was the principal and the vice principal.
School? Are you talking about sister school?
No, it was KIPS.
KIPS? Okay, KIPS school.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay.
And our principal was really mean. She was like a mean girl. That's how I would put it. And but she wasn't like too annoying because I feel like there was just too many girls. And we had such a big class where it didn't feel like very targeted and very like personal. Mm-hmm. So at the end of the year, I remember my friends and I, we were on the bus and we were talking about, like we should do a prank. And then I suggested, I was like, oh, how about this? I'll make a cake, and then it would be like fully covered. It would look like a normal cake, and inside it would have like one of the hottest chili from like that for. And it literally was like an orange chili where like if you smell it, your face can flush, it was like that hot. And I was like, let's cake, right? And we leave it and we won't give it to her until at the end of the day, and we would send someone, and then I would make it and someone else would go and give it to the cafeteria lady, and then someone else would kind of like, so that they couldn't really truly trace who's
they will trace though. They will get traced. But I love how smart you think you were, but okay.
We're like, okay, and then we even had someone that would take the fault of saying that someone else gave them the cake, but they didn't know. So we kind of like tried our best, okay? But so we did that. I made the cake the next day. It was chocolate covered. It had whipped cream. It looked like a really cute cake. It was like fully normal cake. Just inside, when you open it, it was orange, and it was like just filled with chili. So it was our last day, and the thing is that we were in like the English section, so we would finish a day before the Arabic section, and we were like, okay, we'll let it go, and then we'll just let it go with the year, But we forgot that. I don't think we forgot, but it just happened that the next day we came back to school, but we were going out, so we didn't fully go into like classes or whatever.
Yeah.
And so we gave the cake. So my friend took the cake and gave it to the cafeteria lady. And no, actually she didn't end up finding the cafeteria lady. So then she gave it to an upperclassman from a completely different grade. And she was like, hey, can you give them this cake and just let them know that some girls did and you don't know who? So then they gave it to this girl, and then she ended up giving it to the cafeteria lady. And at the end of the day, she gave it to the principal.
Yeah.
However, she didn't take it to the principal. She gave it to the vice principal instead of the principal. And the next day, we didn't know what happened because we just kind of let it go. But then the next day when we came back, everyone was talking about how the vice principal's kid took a piece from the cake, and she was like,
Oh my god! Oh my
so
god!
he just got so messed up. I mean, the whole thing just kind of blew up, and everything was kind of like everyone's talking about it, but nobody like they knew like it was our class, but nobody knew who exactly because at some point it got lost in the mix, which was great until the cafeteria lady decided that there was a girl who kind of looked like me, and she said that it was her because she knows her name, and she said it was her because they saw her carrying the cake in the morning. But she said that's that girl's name, but it was mine, but it was me carrying the cake in the morning.
So
So
someone
at
else
first
was
we were like,
taking the
oh,
fault
whatever.
for you. Yeah, someone
Yeah.
else was taking the fault for you.
But then that person was like, that's not me. She was like, that's not me. Like, straight up. And then they were investigating. So initially, this is one part I forgot. Initially, the cake was supposed to have like a laxative, but we didn't really go that far. But initially, that was kind of like the plan, like, oh, maybe we'll put a laxative, not too much, just something, you know. But we didn't do that. But when the cake was eaten, then someone said, oh, I heard the girls put laxative in it. And that's when then they started calling, right? Now it's like, okay, we need all the girls. They called every single person in my class. And then eventually they got my friend who was the last person who gave the cake. And she folded real quick. And they called her mom to the office. And so then they called her and her mom, and then this was like 4, maybe 5 days into the holiday.
Oh my
and then they
god! You all forgot about it, right? And
yeah, we were like, nobody's gonna chase us. We're good.
Yeah.
Then they called me actually, and I was like, oh, this is Rena. And then I was like, hello. And then it was like, hey, like this is the vice principal. Is your mom available in the house? And I was like, yeah, my mom is sick. She was sick actually. And then I was like, but she was like, can I talk to her? I was like, sure. And then they talked to my mom, and then my mom was like, okay, I guess. Then she was like, okay, they're asking that we should come to the school. And then my mom was like, what did you do? I was like,
it's the cake.
It was like the cake that I was doing the other day. I filled it with chili, and I knew, and I didn't think it was gonna come back to it. And my mom was just like, oh, whatever, okay, you know, she really didn't care that much.
Yeah. I think because this is who you are. I think by that time your mom figured.
She was just like,
but you gained the reputation. You grew the reputation, and then the next year they were like, Roua, that's it. You're responsible now.
Exactly. And literally she was like, she looked at me and she was like, whatever has happened the year before will never happen this year. She was like, do you hear me? And I was just like, okay.
We'll see.
Okay.
I was like,
no.
You can't take the hood out of me, okay? I'm gonna come in with that.
So then, the conversation started where she then started talking about, okay, now this year we need to focus on like what we like and stuff like that, so that for next year we know if we're gonna go into like the sciences or the humanities and what subjects we like and whatnot. And then she goes around and she asks every single person to say, what do they want to take? What do they want to be when they grow up? What do they want to study in college, and what do they want to be after that? And everyone was saying there, you know, I want to be a doctor, I want to be this, doctor, lawyer, blah, blah, engineer. And by the time it came to me, and I was like, honestly, I don't think I want to go to college. I told her all I want to do is go to a French, like I want to learn French and maybe go to France and then figure it out then. That's all I said. I was like, that's my plan.
Like the kid, the prank last year, and now she doesn't want to go to college. You were their nightmare.
And things, I think what bothered her is that I was actually still like one of the top students in the class. So she couldn't really fault me being like, oh, you don't study, blah, blah, you know, it was just kind of like, she really like was agitated. And when I said that, she laughed at me. And then she said, you know, they really said to dream big, just not that big. And I was just kind of like, okay. And what I was taken back by it a lot, and I remember I was just like, what is she talking about? Because to me, that wasn't a dream. that to me was like my stepping stone to until I figure out what I actually want to do. So it didn't feel like it was something outside of my like like something that I couldn't do or like something like so imaginative. To me, it was just like, yeah, I'll just wait. Like it's not that deep. I'm 60. Like at that time I was like 14, just turning 15.
Yeah.
I was just like, I don't know. I felt the way about it, and I remember I was just like, I don't know why it bothered me so much, and I remember I was telling my mom about it. And she was like, "Oh, she's just envy. She's just jealous. And you shouldn't
But
like
that's the truth.
take it." Yeah, right. And that's the truth. But at that time, I was just like, "Why would she say that to me specifically?" Because I feel like it wasn't. If anything, I feel like she would have been like, no, focus on going to school or something, But it wasn't like that too. She was like, "This is so big. Going to France is just like, oh, out of this world." And I was just kind of like, so I was just taken aback by it. And then after that, I just was like, okay, it just seems like whatever I'm going to do, I'm just going to have to do it. And a part of me was just like, I'm going to get to the day when I'm going to prove you wrong. I didn't say it to anyone.
Yeah.
I was like, oh,
yeah.
Absolutely. I was like, you will not take me down. I was like, I'm going to prove you wrong. Yeah. And so then that would fully be my scene, my first scene.
Okay. I love the scene, but I have questions. Such as, I usually ask, why did you choose this scene specifically? I know, and we talked about this, you having so many scenes, but I say choose the one that's closer to you, that's more relevant. What do you think about your life right now that made this scene so relevant and so vivid in your brain that you wanted to be the first scene?
I think because it shows exactly the person that I am now, that people tried so hard to change me to not be that person. And it's someone who says, I don't care what you say, I'm still going to do what I want to do. And I'm going to prove you wrong in the process and move on with my life. It's kind of like that. And I think I love looking at that scene because it did trigger me in the moment. It probably wasn't as dramatic as I thought about it in the moment, right? Like as I went about it, I was like, oh, whatever, she's just a hater, But now I look back and I was like, no, it was a moment for me that I stuck to myself because I believed in myself. And I didn't have to tell anyone or had to prove to her that I believed in myself. I just had to do it. And that's why I chose that scene.
Yeah. I think I agree with your mom to the fact that, and I saw this I saw this during the years. I have something similar, right? The first teaser where I talked about the teacher, her talking about my parents' divorce, but something similar also was as both of us being dark skinned, comparing to other kids who are not, right? I remember being the first in my class in elementary school, and going into the fifth grade, right? We went into the morning, what do you call it? When you go into the morning lines in the morning in Sudan, and the homeroom teacher came in, and it was the first time she met the class, and she was like literally standing in front of me, and no, like two students away from me, and she asked who's the first in this class, right? And everyone said Sabrine, and I said me, and she said you. Exactly. Right. And I was like, what did I do? I didn't actually here's the thing with me, I don't recognize jealousy or envy. When I was a kid, I didn't recognize it because it wasn't in me. Not that I'm like an angel or anything, but it wasn't something that I experienced because I wondered a lot about people's life in terms of what is the other side of the story. You know what I mean? If they have something that I don't have, I always ask myself, but what did they give me? Can I handle what they have? The other side of the story that I don't see, right? So I did not understand jealousy because I didn't have it growing up. I understand it now when it happens to me right now, because I'm not going to say I don't go around not getting jealous by someone, right? It happens and I recognize it and I stay with it and I understand why it has it and then I move from it, right? but to make sure that it does not go into envy. And I don't understand why that. I still don't understand why, right?
Mhm.
But the only thing I can think of is the difference in skin color and everything else. That's the only way I look at it. But that teacher, she literally like, I remember one time I was excelling, and I remember one time she stopped pinching my cheeks for forgetting my pen. I just
Oh my
asked for
God.
I asked for an extra pen, and the way she pinched my cheeks, it wasn't it wasn't like a punishment or annoyance. It was someone who's like really, really annoyed by your existence. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
other people forget their pens. It was usually like, it was like her time to find something.
Yeah.
You know, it was her time to like punish me for something because she couldn't find anything wrong with me. So
Right.
that was the thing, and she was just like really like, it hurt so bad because she kept doing ooh, ooh, ooh.
Yeah.
Like literally that's
Yeah.
how it was, right? And I think growing up, what I've noticed that with adults into children, sometimes I myself think, oh, they have so much time to figure it out. If I
Mm.
only go back, you know, with the experience I have when I was,
Yeah.
you know, I want to go back to the 15-year-old me and tell her, relax. It's not that serious. You know what I mean? And then, because it depends from one person to another, some people are aware of that and they recognize it and they don't act on it, and others do act on it. You know what I
Right.
mean? And that's, I think,
Absolutely.
the experience you and I had is a teacher acting. And I
Mhm.
honestly think, from the bottom of my heart, that they do the psychological testing for teachers, because we need good teachers. We don't need those
Right.
sorts of teachers. We don't need these sorts of teachers. So I'm just gonna move on from this scene to adult you right now, because you said you were in Sudan, and I know you're not located in Sudan right now. So how did this happen?
Yeah. So it happened that the 1 year after I was accepted to another high school program that was a 2 year program in the Netherlands. So
Wow.
I was fortunate enough to get a scholarship, and so then after graduating high school in Sudan, I did 2 more years of high school in the Netherlands, and from there 2 years I was able to graduate and then applied to study in the United States, and then I got another scholarship to come and study in the United States. So that was kind of how I moved around. And finally, I studied in the United States. I graduated. I started working 3 years, and then after I was like, okay, I need to change everything in my life. Just everything. This is not working for me. This is not the picture that I had for myself. And then I
What did you
ended up.
study? I just want to see the picture fully. What was your profession?
Yeah, absolutely. So originally, I went in to study mass communication and to do media studies.
Mm-hmm.
But then I switched it around and I ended up studying business with a minor in mass communication, and I specialized in resort management. So that's kind of what I ended up doing.
Mm-hmm.
And I graduated. I worked in my field. I worked in resorts. I've done all of that, but then quickly it
Wasn't your
didn't
thing.
work for me. Yeah, not in the United States. It was like soul sucking for me, and I was like, this is not the world that I imagined. This is not what I wanted. And I was planning on going back to Sudan. I just knew that it wasn't yet. Like it wasn't like I'm officially 100% knowing that I'm gonna go back, just not now. So I have all these ideas that I did that about kind of improving something in Sudan or the sector in Sudan, and it was like there's a few, but it was mostly like customer service. It was mostly focused on tourism in Sudan, and not just international tourism into Sudan, but local tourism, and having people in Sudan moving around and creating relationships where the culture can be used by the people in the culture and not necessarily commodify it to sell it to
Others,
foreigners. Yeah.
foreigners.
So that was kind of what I studied, and I left it behind because I always knew that I can always go back to school. I love school, I love learning, I love studying. So I never had to feel like, okay, like I needed to do masters right now. I was kind of like, okay, let me work, let me figure it out, and if I want to like find something that is even more like geared towards what I can, something that can add up to the big picture, then I would love to do that. So I wanted to do that, and that was what happened last year. I decided to do a career change. I was like, okay, I'm going to quit my job. I was working in customer service for 3 years. I was like, no more. I'm going to go into tech. I'm going to like infuse tech into all the things that I've studied, and the world is gearing towards that. Let me do that, and let me travel while all of this is happening because I've just haven't been doing anything. And it just happened that that's when I did that. I started with my first trip, and it was in Puerto Rico. And that's where I'm right now. I'm living in Puerto Rico. And it just happened that within less than a month, the war started in Sudan. And that's kind of what made me stay here and be like, okay, I need to settle down and I need to, recalibrate, figure out what is happening.
And is your family in Sudan? Like, how did this war felt like?
Yeah, so they were all in Sudan, but now they've all left. My immediate family.
Yes,
my family, there's still some there, but my immediate family, all of them have left. But they were in Sudan when the war happened.
When everything started, because it started in Khartoum, right? Because my immediate family is here, but like my uncles and aunties and all of that, like the people who lived in the big house had to leave, right? Yeah, I think we both experienced the same. Waking up in April, and I still remember going downstairs, just woke up, and my mom coming out and saying, hey, the war started in Sudan. And actually, let me ask you this question. How did you feel when you find out that the war started?
It was almost surreal because it was a text that I received from my friend. So it wasn't even my family who reached out to me. It was my best friend from back home. And it was pictures. And I remember I was working in a farm at the time. So I woke up at 5 a.m. in the morning. And I would do like my morning thing. It was such a slow morning. I'd wake up, I'd get ready. And by the time I would get into I have my breakfast on the table, then I would look at my phone. And I looked at the text, and it was just a text of bullet holes in her house and bullets in her hand. And she's saying, the war started and they've just shot our house, like our entire house. And I remember just looking at the phone. I was like, this is it. Is this real? I didn't know what to do or what to think. And the first thing I tried to call, and it didn't go through, and I just texted, and I was like, are you and your family okay? Then immediately I texted my family, I was like, are you guys okay? Like, I tried calling, and they were all like, yeah, alhamdulillah, like everything's good, like we hear the gunshots. And it was kind of like something. I'm freaking out, but I didn't want to freak out if someone else isn't freaking out, and that's kind of how it felt for me. It's just kind of very unsettling because outside I was like, I can't freak out yet. I'm not supposed to freak out. That's kind of how I told myself, like, you can't freak out. You're the one in safety. Don't freak out. And yeah, that's kind of my initial. How about you?
I didn't believe it. Right? My mom, I woke up. It was before anything, no coffee, nothing. And for people watching, we don't have the Arabic channels here in Canada. The news is very censored, right? Even if there's news from Sudan, it comes late in the regular news, and it's not what we know. We know that's not what's happening, right? And so we have our own channels that we buy and we watch. So I just woke up and was getting down my house, downstairs to get my coffee, and my mom came out of her room saying, hey, I need the news. I need the Sudan TV or whatever, because the war has started in Sudan. I was like, are you sure you're not exaggerating? They're negotiating. I don't know what was happening then, because I literally gave up. Not gonna lie, I gave up on like reading every day and following everything, and I'm just like, I hope everyone is safe, but this is like draining my energy. And but deep down, it's going to start. Like if you are watching, if you like have a little bit common sense, these two people they're not gonna give up the power. So some sort of crisis is going to happen. When, where, how, etc. You don't know. Like as a Sudani person who live abroad and can see the full picture, you have that sense in you. You have that gut feeling that something big is going to happen. But when it happens, you don't want it to happen. Right? So it's still like shocking. Right? So basically I like remote control, like we were on the news right away. I don't know who texted my mom, to be honest. I just I just start watching the news in disbelief. There's some news that they were out in the Arabic news channel, the Middle Eastern, Sudan TV. I don't know. Like I don't even remember what channel we were watching. Like it's been over a year. It's been over a year now, right? So I was just watching with my morning coffee. I didn't say anything. I was just like, how is everyone? Like, how are my aunties, uncles, etc.? It's Ramadan. It was Ramadan, right? So my mom is saying they're good. So I'm not gonna lie. I start thinking realistically. So I called and I said, you need to collect all your documents in a case, right? In a bag, and for the grab. Or take picture and send it to me. Like the house documents, your certificates, your citizenship, everything, your insurance number, everything. I need pictures. I need it saved somewhere. And if Sudani people, older generation, they don't listen, because my uncle was like, it's just a clashes. The clashes. The army is gonna take care of it. Blah blah blah. But my family were surrounded by RSF within days. Like they were one of the few people, I think, who left. The first people who left their house, because I think within a week or so they were surrounded in Omdurman, right? And then they had to they were going around Khartoum to find refuge until some of them left to Sudan, Egypt. I still have 2 uncles in Sudan. So you don't want it to happen. It just, for me, I've sensed what's gonna happen, right? But it was still shocking. I would say that, and the anger. It's just a lot of emotions, all at once. Like, why can't you guys listen? And then you go from anger, to like, are you okay? Are you safe? And I think that happened to you too. It's not just your family and immediate family. It's your friends too. Did you leave? Are you safe? Or did you cross the border? What's gonna happen? They're on the road on buses, and the buses are unsafe routes. Sorry. And you don't know what's gonna happen. Some of them go through the desert. So like you don't know the full thing, and they don't tell you. And you're like, can you please update me? And you don't want to like stress them. But you are stressed.
Absolutely. I swear, I feel like we all live a very similar experience being abroad, because that's exactly how it was for me too, where at some point I felt like I was the one that they are trying to avoid talking to, because I'm like, did you do this? Did you do this? Like, the thing is that for me, even before this all happened, I was always telling them, I think you might need to leave Sudan. I don't know, I just always had it in me that, I think maybe it's time. Let's think about it, like, really realistically, but then my dad is like, no, this is home. Like, I built this house, so valid. It's so valid, obviously, like, very valid. But then when it happened, there was also this, like, oh, it'll just be a couple of days. Don't worry. It'll be a couple of days. And I remember from day one, I was like, you need to, like, start getting things ready. Like, you need to start thinking about leaving. And I couldn't, like, I knew my dad wasn't responsive of it. So then thankfully, like, I have my siblings, and my brother is not, he's just like almost 2 years older than me. He was the one where I'm like, I need you to start like getting things like ready. Like, everyone should have a bag. And that's when I realized that my siblings were ready. Whether my dad was
He was
accepting
ready or
the
not, yeah.
grasp or not, yeah.
But
He
that's
didn't fully grasp it until he saw my uncle and his family were like, okay, we're leaving. And then my dad was like, okay, maybe I guess we should all leave, you know? And then everyone's like, yeah, we're ready. We're just waiting for you, you know?
yeah,
But
like that's the experience of many older generations in which they will die in Khartoum. And
yeah,
the kids are like, no, we're not gonna leave you to die.
yes.
We need you with
So,
us. And the older person is like, this is my home, this is my house, I built it. And it's really, I know for some people watching this who haven't experienced war like us, we haven't, but we had people, right, who were our closest people, our family, the houses, the memories, everything. We live this. This is where we belong to, our roots. But at the end of the day, it's the choice between your life and your house, right? And you just don't want to leave. There's, like, it's such a hard thing to do because you don't know when you're going back, and you weren't offered the choice. And as
right,
someone who was offered the choice, when I left Sudan, I left by choice.
right,
Right?
right.
You and I left by choice, but other people, like the people in the war, they didn't leave by choice. They wanted to stay. This is their country, their land. They were
Also,
okay. They're okay with the settings. They were okay with going against the political people, the politicians, the RSF, the army. They were okay staying there and fighting for their country, for where they
yeah,
belong, right? Their families and neighbors. There's history, you know?
right.
And no one wants to leave this behind. No one, absolutely no one. I want everyone who's listening or watching to take just a minute to think about leaving everything behind. Everyone they know, the language they speak, the food, everything. Like, you know, it's such a
Yeah,
hard thing to do. It's such a hard thing to do. It's not easy. But I think just like what you said, I did sense this, and I did say, leave, leave, leave. You guys need to leave. Even when my dad was building his home back home, I was like, no, don't build a house there. Don't spend
yeah.
money. You know what I mean? And my dad was like, this is our roots. We need. I was like, you're going to lose it. And this
Mhm.
happened 10 years ago.
Wow.
10 years ago, right? And I said, I don't see a future. And it's sad for me to say this. And I was received as a hater.
Right.
But when the setting happened, I saw the future. I said, okay, maybe we have a chance. And then you know how this
Yeah.
ended,
Yeah.
right? So it's the fact that, again, as a misfits, I don't know. I always feel like a misfit. Did you have that in you, like when you left? Was that in you as well? Like in you felt like, no, I need to find home somewhere else, or was it just an
Absolutely.
ambition?
Yeah. Absolutely. I think I've always felt like I just did not belong in Sudan. It's as sad as it was. I just felt like wherever I was, I couldn't fit in properly. There was always a part of me that had to be molded in a certain way for me to feel like, okay, maybe I can fit in right here. And I was fortunate enough to travel for vacation as a kid. So I've always been so interested about other people and other culture and how people live and how people just be in their own environment in different environments. So I always had this like, there's so much more. There's so much more than Sudan. There's so much more. So I feel like I've always had it in my heart that I just wanted to travel and I wanted to be far away. But also with that, the minute I left, I just, all I could think about was Sudan and when I will get back home, right?
Yeah.
Because I knew that it wasn't going to be anytime soon because like, I mean, I just left for school. I would love to have the imagery of like, oh, I'm just going to go back home and live at home instead of that. But then the reality, the political reality wasn't viable. There's so many reasons that just wouldn't have been an easy option to just be like, okay, I'll just go back home.
If we take
So
the political element, out of this.
Mhm.
Tell me why you didn't belong to Sudan. You didn't fit. And
Because I was
let's be honest.
constantly.
Let's be
Uh,
honest. Because I have
yeah.
the same feeling. And the moment I leave from Sudan, all the longing and the yearning and everything around it. And literally, I only listen to Sudanese music. That's how much I feel homesick. But the moment
Mhm.
I go to Sudan, is like, here we go again.
Right. Here we go again.
That's so exhausting for
So
me to be
real.
here, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah, tell me I know there are a million reasons, but give me like one or two to like.
Yeah.
I would love. The reason I'm asking you this, Roua, and for everyone listening, is because I think we have issues within we did not solve, and we didn't.
Mhm.
They are unspoken, and people, they're like the big elephant in the room, And in Sudan, there's so many elephants, invisible,
Right.
but at the same time visible by some
Mhm.
people. And if it's visible to me and I want to talk about it, I'm usually asked to like stay quiet, right?
Mhm.
Not to bring it. There's so many reasons and excuses for not to bring it. It's a taboo. It's you're too loud. It's not a women topic. You know what I mean? They'll always find a reason to silence you,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
And I'm not that
Absolutely.
kind of person. I'm a person who wants to bring the conversation to the table so I can move on from it and I can do something with my life, right? And this is how I always looked at the Sudanese community. It's like, let's figure out, let's dissect the elephant. Okay, that's not a good emoji, but you know what I mean. But let's
Yeah.
talk about this issue. Let's solve it so we can move on and make something out of this country. We cannot let leftovers colonialism, issues that divided us to stay to this day. It's like too many years. So
Absolutely.
let's dive into this because I know
Yeah.
your film has a lot to do with this. From
Mhm.
the first scene, you're talking about the teacher. I said something there. So here you go. The mic is all yours.
Absolutely. I think one of the things that I was always aware of growing up is that I've had a lot of questions that people always told me that don't ask questions. When I only wanted to know why, and it's not that I was opposed to doing the thing that I was being told to do or being asked to do, but after a while I realized that a lot of people don't actually know why they're doing things. And it it then becomes a performance. So a lot of people are just performing something without actually knowing absolutely what they're doing or why they're doing it. And if if it's harmful to themselves or others,
We'll do it.
right? So then after a while, if I'm saying, hey, like, why are you doing this? It's hurting you and it's hurting us. Then it's like, indeed, that what do you know?
Yeah.
What do you know?
Yeah.
Yeah, you're just a kid.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Right? And then after a while, I've noticed that people actually, like even my parents, sometimes they do things because they don't even know why they're doing it. They've been told to do it or they've seen someone do it and that's why they're doing it. And by the time they see us doing it, they just don't want us to do it. But they have no reason to why, right? And I understand that it's also like things being passed down, but this is where, to me, I'm like, why would you pass down the harmful stuff too, right? Since we have the ability to do so many things differently. And that's what I always noticed that I naturally did. I just did things differently and people didn't like it. Even if in the end, I still was like an A student and stuff like that. Like for example, like my parents, didn't really weren't about me like weren't telling me to go study and do this. I naturally just did that. And I also liked studying, so I like enjoyed it, so I didn't really force myself. But then I wouldn't study where like I would just be in a room and I would just read. Like sometimes I'd have music and I would read something and then I'd come back and I'd read something. I'd come back. Like I had such a weird way of studying, and I would study in my bed laying down, while people have to be on a desk or something. Like I just did whatever I did. But then in the end, it didn't matter. And I remember at the beginning, like I would be like, use the desk, like we've got your desk, use the desk, and I just like, doesn't matter in the end, like the information is in here. It's in,
I
and
never
it's just a
studied in a
simple
desk.
thing.
I never studied in a
Yeah,
desk. Yeah.
exactly. So sometimes it's kind of like, wow, that this doesn't represent anything. Like let me just do me. And after a while I've noticed that I've just been labeled stubborn and, oh, I just don't listen. And I just do, and in the end, I'm like, no, I'm listening. And I just choose not to take it in, because after a while, if I took it in, then I'm just constantly being told to do something that I don't want to do. And that also translates in social settings where people would do things that are, let me be more specific.
Tell
I
me
think
the
it's in
story
the,
itself. Let's not go
yeah,
around the topic. Tell me
yeah,
something really
absolutely.
specific that
Yeah,
people didn't even want to do.
so when I was a kid, I was considered a picky eater. But to me, I never really considered myself a picky eater because I would eat anything, right? But I had very certain things where if they tasted a certain way or if they smelled a certain way, I wouldn't eat it.
A texture,
Right? But this
Roua.
is just, yeah, exactly. But this is just for me. And my mom has always known that, but I've also noticed that like from my mom's side of the family, the way they cook, I can easily go around it. It's not like I can eat certain things. I can, but then when I'm like, for example, with my dad's side of the family, and as a kid, I used to say it honestly. Like, I just be like, right, it's always the dad's side of the family. I would
Sorry,
always
Dad.
be told, like,
Yeah, something's wrong.
I'm getting better.
Yeah. Go ahead. Sorry.
I remember just as a kid, I would always say just very honestly what I like. I would even do it in my mom's side of the family too. But to them, it wasn't harmful. They would laugh. I'd just be like, okay, like she doesn't eat this, that's okay. She doesn't eat this, that's okay. Like, but with my dad's side of the family, it was always like, oh, your daughter is so disrespectful. She said she doesn't like the smell of this. She doesn't like the smell of this. Or she commented on that thing and stuff like that, And I'm just like, yeah, like, what's wrong with that? I didn't like it. I never understood why. I was like, to me, I didn't like it. I don't like the smell of that. I don't like the taste of this. So after a while, it literally built up to an extent where, like, every time, and this is very reoccurring too, because we visit our family quite often, right? So this is something that after a while, I have to develop all these small ways in which, like, oh, okay, so like when I get there, I just have to say hello to everyone and then go to the room where I hide and read a book and watch a movie until like it's time to eat. And when I eat, I have to come down really slow and then sit in the corner and then get a spoon and then eat really slow and take really, really small bites so that nobody pressures me to eat, so that by the time like the table is finished, I ate enough for me to be still respectful to the people and their food without them thinking that it's about them, right? Because everything is personalized. Oh, you don't like our food. You don't like our drinks. Oh, you just don't, you think you're better than us. And I'm just like, why does it have to be so complicated, right? And this is the part where I feel like the performance then is then passed down to me for me to do the performance, right? Now I have to be like,
masking. I don't know if you know what masking is.
Yes.
It's masking.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. 100%.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry for like I just had to say that, and I think okay, this might be a reach, but the Sudani community and how it's built between families and the performance, it reminds me of a narcissistic community where everything is taken so into the heart. Everyone think they're the spotlight. And for people who don't care about being on the spotlight, or for people who see things for what they are, it's really hard for them to navigate that community.
Right.
Because it was all about the fact this is food, right? You don't want to waste it, so you're not going to eat it. You're going to leave it for the people who like it. Simple. This is like literally the simplest thing ever. If you don't like something, you don't eat it. As simple as that. And it's not like being picky, they're not eating the vegetables, because you would eat the ones you like and leave the ones you don't like. It's as simple as that. It's just a preference. It's a personal preference. It has nothing to do with you, the way you cook things, etc., etc., etc. But at the end of the day, it's you are pressured to perform and put that performance that you like things because you're being disrespectful, right? And it's funny for me because that was my experience with Shai Beleven, milk tea or carrot for listeners. Carrot right now is very popular, but we have a version of it, and I did not like it. I simply would love red tea any day with 1 spoon of sugar. And every time I say my preference, everyone looks me up and down. I had no
Mhm.
idea why. I just didn't know why. It just, and then I was forced. Like sometimes, like people be like, "Is it because we use milk, not powdered milk? Are you disgusted?" I'm like, "I'm not disgusted. I don't like the taste. I don't like the taste."
Yeah.
And I didn't know at that time I was lactose intolerant, so it was hurting my tummy as well.
Right.
So I had to drink so many cups of milk tea, like so many cups. You guys have no idea. And I had to water it down with the biscuits, just like you. You said,
Yeah.
I'll put the biscuits in and eat the biscuits until like a little bit is left, and then I'm cold greedy because I ate all the biscuits. But I'm just trying to avoid the tea. You know what I mean? And it is exactly the
Absolutely.
same. It is exactly the same. And this is the thing about the Sudani community that people like us, expats, I would say, or misfits, right? And I think
Mhm.
I had this more experience than you because I wasn't born in Sudan. I was raised somewhere else, and I come to Sudan. So they always had this like, oh, and it's because you were born there, you're different.
Mhm.
You know what I mean? So it's
Yeah.
really hard. It's really hard. And when you go back to the community, when you travel and I don't know, have you experienced going back after you travel to the US? Have you experienced like,
Oh, absolutely. I think it happened even because at the beginning it was more frequent. Every year I would go back, and I remember the first year coming back, and I it was almost unsettling and heartbreaking at the same time because it was almost like everything was frozen in time. But at the same time, you just realize how there are so many harmful things that we do and we keep doing without saying that, hey, like maybe we should change doing this. Or like I remember going back and the conversations that I realized that I was having with my friends were the same conversations that we've had for like 7 years, right? Like since I've known them. And it wasn't anything wrong with it. It's just like, oh, we're so limited in so certain topics that we can't go beyond this. Um, then I realized just how far away I
you've
was
moved
from
on?
everything.
You moved
Yeah,
on.
and I've moved on. And it was so hard because now it's almost like whenever I am out with them, then someone would point out and be like, "Oh my god, you've been so quiet. You must don't like our conversations. Maybe we're too boring for you. Maybe we're this, you know." And I'm just like, "No, it's not that." But then at the same time, it's like it's very hard to just be like, "I changed," and I know you didn't, but I can't be like, "Oh, but you guys didn't change," It doesn't make sense. So it was really heartbreaking, but also very hard because I was not going to be there for a long time. So it was very hard to kind of expand that circle of people and friends because it was always going to be very limited the time I was going to be there.
There's so many things here you just mentioned, so many themes. First of all, loyalty to the friends that you
Mm-hmm.
grew up with, right? And with
Yeah.
loyalty comes love.
Mm-hmm.
And because now, this is the thing, you cannot fix a person, right?
Right.
No matter how hard you
Absolutely.
try, no matter how. And there's nothing broken with them to fix them. It's just the reality is very different. And
Mm-hmm.
what's sad about that is that you see their potentials. You sit there and you listen to the conversation and you see the potential that is in there, but with the community boundaries. And I'm not speaking religious boundaries here. I'm just speaking unrealistic boundaries
Right.
that does not make sense at all, right? With those boundaries, you're like, but hey, what if? No, and you want to say it, right? And
Mm-hmm.
I'm outspoken. I've said a couple of things, and the the backlash is, oh, so you think you're better? Oh, so
Right.
now you're coming and you don't like what you see? And I have to say, the first time I traveled from Sudan when I was 13 and came back, I was almost 13, came back at 13. It just, you've moved on and right now you see what is wrong. And it is heartbreaking for you because this is your land, these are your people. And you carry so much passion you know what you said earlier? You said, I want to go back and establish a system for customer care, for this, for this, for that, because you learned how to do it and now you can do it and you want to develop the country. This is love,
Right.
right? And this is
Mm-hmm.
like being a toxic relationship. It is a toxic relationship, because in a toxic relationship, there, or like, or friendship, there's the person who sees what's wrong with you, but they lie to you. They make you laugh,
Mm-hmm.
They lie to you and you go on with yourself. You're not getting feedback. You're not developing. You're staying where you are. And there's the person who's going to come and say, hey, I see this and this and this and that. Let's change it together. Let's do it together, right? But it's really hard. There's the Sudani community overall has huge ego. There's nothing wrong with them. If you point it out, you are the one to blame. So at the end of the day, you just remain quiet. And if we talk, you will die at 20, right? And the film, like when it came out, it hit a lot of points and it got a lot of backlash, right? Because it touched on a topic that's, in my opinion, silly. Why would you visit a grave? Front of it is a sheikh, and believe what they say. Why can't you just pray in your own home and ask for what you want?
Right.
Why do you need like a real estate agent between you and God? You know what I mean? Like, literally.
I am the middleman.
Not the middleman, but it's a real estate agent, because he's in front of a state which is a tomb, basically.
Right.
A dead person is inside the ground, and that person is the middleman, is staying in a holy land in their brain that is just a tomb, right? And then he tells you will die at 20, your kid will die at 20, you believe he will die at 20. And we're speaking in the film, but in reality, this happens. People go to sheikhs and they listen to what they say.
Yes.
And that's dangerous. It just means that those people are giving you false prophecies about yourself. You're accepting other people's narratives of you for you, and you're living it. For goodness sake, just wake up. Wake up.
And you're living it. That's so real. Honestly, like, I feel like this is a conversation that I talk about very passionately, but also there's a lot of anger that comes with it, because I'm like, I see just how destructive it is in our society, where people blindly allow other people to think for them, and I'm just like, why, right? And it goes back to me asking why and nobody giving me an answer, and then I have to go and find the answer for myself. And I always just wondered, I'm like, how is it that you would just believe this person? Like, someone told you this, and then you take what they say and then come and try to enforce it on me without even acknowledging me as that I am a whole person. I have my own way of thinking and stuff like that. I didn't realize just how I was always fully aware and using my brain to its capacity until I left home and I was being taught about how to critically think. And then I'm like, oh, so I was always doing that. It's just that I wasn't allowed to do it when I was in Sudan.
Because there's a rule you have to follow.
I tried to do that. Yes. Right. And then not only that, the education system would mold you so hard to fit you into the box that then when you break out of it, they'll be like, oh my God, you're thinking outside of the box. And then it'd be like, okay, that's great, but let's come back to the box. And then whenever we need you, you need to step out. And I'm just like, what are we doing? And that's kind of goes back to this whole thing with the sheikh and khalwa and like all these religious institutions where people blindly follow. Because I think the biggest issue with Sudan, to me personally, is how badly interwoven the religion and the culture became that people can't even separate it.
Oh my God! Yes, thank you.
They can,
Thank you.
It's so interwoven that it hurts, and you don't even know which part is hurting. Because it's all meshed up together. So you can't even point it out so that you do. Yeah.
Because you have to go on your own journey to find what religion is. I kid you not. Because
Yes.
one time I wanted a private room in a dorm, and I was told it's haram. And I was like, I looked at her because I know the hadith, I know what she's talking about. I was like, can you explain yourself? And she kept saying it's haram, it's not allowed to have your own room. And I was like, please tell me the resources. And this is the mold we're talking about. Because here I am, because I'm gonna tell you, since I was a kid, I had issues with how they use religion in school, right?
Yes.
I had issues that I might get not bitten. Is it bitten? Beaten. Sorry. English is not serving me today, because we're talking Sudan and I want to switch to my language. So so I was like, if I don't memorize the surah, I'm sure there's another way to go around it, because that's God's word and I don't want to falsify it. So I don't want to say the wrong word. And I had issues with that. I was like, if I cannot memorize the full surah, let's break it down for me. Let's do something about it. I'm not against it. I just need another system to do this. If you, for example, one of the surahs that I love is Surah Yusuf. The reason I love Surah Yusuf is because it has a story. As simple as that, right? So if you took every surah and you told me the story behind it, the meaning behind it, maybe I would, and they only have the meanings for the words, and then it did not make sense in my brain. I wanted to ask more questions. And for them, asking the questions about surah is like questioning the surah. I wasn't questioning the surah or God's word. I was questioning how you're teaching it to me. I need to understand it more. And it goes back to the mold. They don't understand it. That's how they were taught. So they're enforcing it on you. And the moment you ask questions, is you're stubborn, you weren't raised well, and sometimes they call people atheists. I'm pretty sure that 50% or 80% of the people who are atheists in Sudan are not atheists. They were told they are. As simple as that, because they ask questions. And if you look at religion correctly, it is about asking questions. It's about understanding it, right? But what happened here is that you mashed traditions, not even traditions. Traditions are good. Cultural aspects, right? And things that just the country, the religion, the country, the politician, the people in power, some men, right, wanted to be rules to be followed, for people to follow, right? So they put it with religion together. They coupled it, and now we have this mashup that you're talking about, and no one wants to explore. Everyone is like, let's call the sheikh, right? And it's funny because it will be people who are so educated, and I'm like, what's this? I remember when I did grade 12, and my dad was like, I was going to get my result, and my dad was like, we call the sheikh, and I was like, Dad, I wrote the test. I read the test, I prayed for myself, I did my surahs, I did everything. I know what I did. I'm just good. I don't need your sheikh. I don't need him. I don't want him to interfere. I don't need a middleman. I know Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Please do not, that's why I related so much. Like, you will die at 20 was like so close to my heart, because this fulfilling of a wrong self-prophecy is sad. And you know what happened? And when you go back to the end of the film, the first thing Muzammil did was a mistake. After he realized he was living a lie, right? So, and this is usually what happens. That's why people are being called atheists. They're being called a lot of names, right? For questioning the people who are following blind. As simple as that. Dare you talk about this? You're a hater. Something's wrong with you. Okay, if it's something is wrong with me, let's figure it out together. But if you think something is wrong with me, fix it. But don't tell me to shut up and throw me back to the mold that you want me to fit in, right? So,
absolutely.
What are some of those things that you had to be thrown back to? If we're talking in film, and just the 1 hour recap, we're starting at your school, right? You did a prank, and then you were reminded of that prank in the first year, and what do you want to do? And you say you want to go to France, and that teacher is like, dream big, but not that big, right? And then we
Right.
go to you to actually accomplishing much more by getting a scholarship to Netherlands, and then going to the US and accomplishing all of this and living all this life. I think it's a full life, and it's very beautiful to live to experience all of that. But also, you're coming back and forth to Sudan, and experiencing a lot of moving on your side, but not for the people in Sudan. You're like, wow, you're still in the same place, right?
Right.
So, and we spoke mold and how the system is doing it. So, what are some of those things? Like, for example, when you watch You Will Die at 20 and you thought, yes, this reminds me of
Mhm. I think You'll Die at 20 really, it hit so many parts um, of my experience in Sudan. And one of it is being not only just someone controlling your narrative, but someone else enforcing that narrative for you, right? Because it wasn't just a sheikh, it was the mom and the entire village kind of like agreeing to that, right? And then submitting to the idea and then be like, yeah, it's so sad. And then it's like that's how the story started. It was like, oh, ya halal, it's like, oh, pity. This is what he's destined to, blah, blah, blah. So then
even the
how would you
father
even,
left.
yeah, exactly,
You and I
right?
were
Like,
saying,
how,
stay and make more babies, for God's sake.
right?
Why are you leaving? Just kidding.
So much more,
Classic
like,
Sudani. Classic Sudani, man. There's a crisis, run away. Look, you don't stay
right,
and
for
fix it. You don't stay and fix it, you run away. You know what I mean?
in it, and even like when she did try to reimagine or re-question it, she went to the same person again, and I'm like, why would you go to the same place that like it's just things like that. But to me, that translated in a way where I have always had so many questions about religion, but the very first thing I knew, this was even before I left Sudan, is that I started to teach myself religion, Islam, by myself from YouTube. Thankfully, I had access to the internet because I was so tired of the narrative of that I have to be scared, right? Everything I have to be, oh, you should be afraid, right? Like you should be afraid of God. And I'm just like, why would I be afraid of him if he's like this, all forgiving, all this? But then asking these questions to the teachers, because it was mostly teachers, especially being a girl, right? It wasn't like I was going to a sheikh and it was giving me these answers. They didn't know as well, or like they would tell me that I'm asking the wrong questions when I'm like, no, I'm pretty sure that's the question I want an answer for. So then leaving Sudan and coming back, I just realized how each time that changes for me, because I almost could see that like a new layer would be added in my consciousness, in my level of understanding. And then I'd come home and a new layer would be removed from what I didn't see before into that, right? So then a new thing, and then I'd be like, oh, I can see why this is being used this way. I can see why it's being taught this way, because this is an element of control. This is how people get to control you, and this is how people get to make you fit that mold. And this is how you then go and creating the mold for other people. It's like a vicious cycle. And what I really liked and what hurt me a lot is that there was that one person who was the outcast, right? The foreigner in the movie.
Yeah.
And the foreigner, he's seen the world, right? Or at least from whatever, he's seen more than whatever that village was, right? And he was able to share even that little world that he had with the
Musamman.
with Muslim, right? And him just hearing the story, not even fully seeing it, and seeing the movies already started changing the way he sees life, already started adding more layers to him. And that's what I'm like, that's what education should be for us. Education is supposed to add layers, not remove ones, not make us see things only from like, it's not supposed to be like blinders on the side. And I felt like that's whenever I come back home, all the conversations, anything that I learned, anything, the situation would be more about the blinders being put, right? And the layers of blinders rather than like it being removed. And the the thing about like him even being prophesized that he was gonna die at 20, to me, I still believe that the death still happened, right? Because to me, I'm like, the death was
Oh, the 20.
an ego. Yeah, it was like a perspective death, an ego death, where now he is rebirthed into
All right.
the person that he could be, his new potential, right? So it wasn't entirely like fully literal. And I feel like this is the issue with a lot of the things in Sudan, is that when they teach you something or pass it down to you, it's almost so literal. Like you said, like they're looking at like the meaning of each word, that they're so looking at the details, they forgot to look back and be like, what are these details telling you? What is the story about? Like, okay, yes, this is happening, but what is it about? So it's like going in and out and in and out. And that's exactly the experience of like leaving Sudan and coming back. It felt like I would be in and out, in and out. I'd go out and then I would like learn so many things and then come back and look at the details. I'm like, oh my God, like, why are we doing this? How is our education system so hurtful to us without us saying anything about it? Because I remember I used to complain about my teachers to the principal, and I'd be like, that teacher wasn't really good because they did this and they did that, and that was wrong what they said, and that's incorrect. But then guess who always was at fault?
Yours,
Me,
because
for
you don't
pointing it
understand
out.
it. Yeah.
Yeah.
What do you know?
And then
What
the
do you know?
teachers would,
Yeah, exactly.
so it's like these cycles just repeating, and
It's sad.
what
It's sad that we don't look at kids as teachers, because kids see things for what they are, and eventually, when you reach full consciousness, this is what happens. And critical thinkers do that, and you will realize that the people who succeed in life are the people who ask the basic questions. Why are we doing this? When you ask this question to anyone in Sudan, they think you're stupid. You know, every time I wish I had a penny, not even $1. For every time I asked a question and everyone just looked at me as I'm the most stupid person in the world, right? And they're like, "Why are you the first in class?" Right? Because my question is so basic. It's so basic. Like, why did you use this person to be the sheikh? Did it just pass down? Who's the firstborn male in the family?
Right.
How is this? How did you prove? You know what I mean? Did he memorize Quran? Like, in what way? Do you know he memorized it? How do you know, like, he didn't memorize it and he's just lying? We don't know. We don't know. Literally, we know nothing. And I'm not questioning real sheikhs, you know? But I'm just questioning the system of how things are passed down.
Right. Exactly.
Like, no. We need a break in the system. And I think You Will Die at 20 is a break in the system. No one sees that.
Absolutely.
No one sees that. And I love how Amjad Abu Layla, the director, and for people who are watching him or listening, we're talking about You Will Die at 20, written and directed by Amjad Abu Layla. It's a Sudanese film. And, well, I'm a fan. I'm a fan, right? So basically what happened, it was a break in the system, and he did say that he sees himself in the foreigner, if I remember correctly. And I saw myself, and okay, I'm just gonna make a weird connection between this film and The Season of Migration to the North by Tayyip Saleh. And I don't know if did you read the book or the story?
No. Okay. I need to.
You need to. Okay. So I read it at 19 and I thought, I'm sorry for everyone listening. I hated the book. I hated it. I was like, why would anyone leave Sudan and come back to live in a small village? Doesn't make sense to me. And then marry one of the women there, and then he dies and blah, blah, blah. Right? But if you look down at the connection here between the book by Tayyip Saleh and the film, there is this foreigner to the village who came back after traveling the world, right? And bringing all of these. And I don't know if that connection is actually real or not, but this is how I felt about it, and I didn't read it anyway. So he brought, when you were saying, he brought everything with him to that small house. And if you remember Carrie's word from the live yesterday, if you watched it or not, she said that even the light is different. And even the casting of the skin tone of the foreigner is different.
Yes.
Right? So that tells you a full story, right? And it's not a I think it's the irony too. The irony of skin tones when we look at foreigners or people with lighter skin tone as better
Mm-hmm.
in comparison to darker skin tone people in Sudan, right?
Yeah.
Which is not true, of course. I think there's an irony here, right? In choosing the
Mm-hmm.
skin tone, and because when you look at Amjad, he's dark skin, so there's a lot in the choosing of casting and the connection between the character in Tayyip Saleh, who brought stuff with him as well from his travels, and he wrote uh, journals. He journaled, and the person is reading his journals in the book with everything that's happening after his death, and he left a wedded woman. And I'm not gonna ruin the book for you. I read it when I was 19, so I don't remember the details. Good for you here. But I think there's a connection. There's a connection here between the two foreigners who lived in that and became not so, because that foreigner Tayyip Saleh was a little bit idealized, while this one was cast away because he drank.
Right.
He used to drink, and he had music,
Right.
and he had all these pictures of dancers, belly dancers, and even you see the sun coming in into his house differently, and the woman, who come and visit him. All of these elements are available. So the film is genius. It's brilliant. It's brilliant.
Yeah,
I can talk
I
forever.
agree.
I can talk forever, but it is a reflection of life. It's a reflection of
Mm-hmm.
his community. Each character, the father who left. I'm so annoyed by it. But this is sorry. This is not about your dad, Tony. This is about you, right? So I just feel like I might take this part away.
Yeah, you
It's
pissed me
just
off too. I don't know. What a side character.
it's the same, life with his actual character, right? But you know what? I think this is what you were experiencing in Sudan. If you look at it, you were experiencing those. You were seeing the big picture with the details coming in and out.
Yeah.
Somehow you became the foreigner,
Yes.
right?
Absolutely.
So you said even after that you wanted to go back. Why?
Yeah.
Why? Because I always ask this question: why a foreigner would go back? And it's not a foreigner.
Right.
You're a foreigner to the people, not to the land. The land knows you. The land needs you,
Right.
but to people, you're a foreigner, right? So why did you want to go back?
There is two reasons. One of it, I believe, is that being plucked from the soil, like from Sudan, and growing up outside of Sudan now and learning a lot, there's almost a part of me that will never be satisfied or will never feel a certain level of home as in Sudan. And home means so many things, but to me, I think being in Sudan, in the land, physically is enough. There's just a sense of comfort that comes with that. Like touching the water, touching the sand, there's just a level of comfort that I know that this is where I am from. And this is where I am, that I would like to put in my all. I would like to put in more, like I would like to grow more. I would like to, I would like to leave something that benefits the land, not necessarily the people. But then there's the selfish part of it where I'm like, I want whatever I didn't have to build a new system for people who I know are going through something similar, to change that for them, to give them another system that gives them a different perspective of what it is to be in Sudan, and to love Sudan. Because if you ask me growing up if I loved Sudan, I wouldn't just answer yes immediately. It would take me some time to think about it. I would think about my family. I would think about the situations, and then I would give you an answer. The minute I left Sudan, that's all I can think about. And I realized just how the love is. And it was, a little bit toxic, you know what I mean? But
This toxic. No, I used to say, what did Sudan give me to give back?
Yeah. No, absolutely. Because I'm so, I feel so angry at so many things. I feel angry at every single school system that I've been through. I feel so angry at so many of the adults that I've been with. And I'm just like, you had options, but you chose to do different. You chose to do what everyone else was doing. And even though my family, specifically like my parents, I know for a fact they didn't follow entirely what the society was telling them to do, which is amazing. And I feel like that contributed a lot to the person that I am.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, I feel like they still held on so tight to certain things, the tradition, the culture, where it was actually harmful to them too, and then to us.
Mm-hmm.
So why I want to go back is because I want to make sure that whoever comes back, especially now with this situation, I just want to create something where people can rehabilitate and not feel like this land doesn't belong to them, like they don't belong. Like I want them to find the meaning of home within themselves. You know, like locationally it doesn't really necessarily matter that much, but feeling at home and feeling safety at home in Sudan is something that I wish I had growing up. So it's kind of like trying to create that fulfillment maybe for someone else. But whether it's a reality or not, especially now after what's happening, is just kind of like far removed. But that is something that I truly want to give or leave behind now. Because now there's other ways, right? Now, like, okay, maybe my books will last forever. My videos will last forever. My digital print will last forever. You know, so it's like I can now reimagine different ways of doing that. But I would definitely love to go back home in Sudan and be in a village, right? But at the same time, I just don't want it to be like, I want them to know there's more than this, you know? Like, I don't want them to just feel restricted. I want them to know that there's a huge world and this is nothing.
Yeah.
Like, this doesn't define you, you know? And I feel like I wish someone told me that, like, this doesn't define you.
What are you talking? Because I feel like there's a specific this. When you say this does not define you, what do you mean by this? For you, at least.
By this, for me, I think this, when I say it, I mean Sudan as it's being carried right now. So, for example, I think about it in terms of what Sudan means. So, for example, I'm someone who literally growing up, I've been told over and over and over again that I'm not Sudanese enough. And I'm just like, it's so annoyed me so much. But I didn't grow up watching like a lot of like Arabic movies or listening to a lot of like Sudanese songs or spending much time in weddings. Like I don't have, like when you think about Sudan culture and the norms of what people like being in weddings all the time, all this, I didn't do any of that. Like I'm someone who really, really just loved doing what I did and just avoid people a lot of times and just read a lot of books. And I just wanted to live whatever life I did. And yes, I had friends and, you know, but at the same time, I didn't, yeah. And it never made me, that's why I always felt like, oh, this is not me. But then when I left, I'm like, no, this is me. And I was part of that. And I didn't have to be the thing that everyone wanted me to be. And I feel like that is the thing with Sudan is that a lot of people just want you to be what they think a Sudanese person should be.
Thank you.
And this is,
thank you.
Yeah, and this is it to me, really. It's like, there's no one way of being Sudanese. Just be you. That is Sudanese. Just be you.
Being born to the land is speaking the different features, you know, the different hairstyles, the different food. The way we eat food, asida, across Sudan is different. Some people eat it very tough.
Oh, absolutely.
And some people, like, you know, the way we eat is different. The way we call things is different in Sudan. There's dialect within the dialect. There's languages within the language. You know what I mean? And all of them are Sudanese, right? And I'm not gonna lie, I hated weddings. I hated them from the bottom of my heart. I hated going to weddings. And weddings during I think during high school, because not high school, sorry, because I didn't do high school in Sudan, during university, because I used to live in Medani and weddings are different in Medani. I'm sorry, not in Medani, but a wedding in a Seiwan is different than a wedding in a venue. It's different. It has different vibes, right? So that one didn't really bother me a lot, even though I didn't go a lot, but it was around me. Like in your house, because in places like Medani, the party does not end at 12. Like it goes on. So you hear the music and you're like, oh, so annoying, I went to sleep. But I did hate weddings. Did hate going to weddings. I wanted to read all the time, just like you. I have like a very similar story of being like, why do I have to act a certain way? Something I said before. Why do I have to kiss my aunties and uncles if I don't like them? I don't have to hug the person because like it's not ape. It's just my preference,
Right.
right? And I love what you said. All of this make us Sudanese. Like the thing about this is something that all Sudani people are suffering from, even in relationships, is the fact that why do I need to fulfill your expectations? Why do I need to fulfill your prophecy of me? Right?
Yeah.
Going back to the film again, it's a
Yeah.
prophecy. The whole community is telling you to fulfill it, to walk that path. And dare you say no?
Yes.
You're not Sudanese. And they go so
Yes.
call me crazy, call me crazy,
Right.
call me stupid, but like going for my identity, man. Why? I can
Right.
still be a crazy Sudanese woman. I don't mind.
Yes.
I don't mind that. Outcast me in the village, but
Yeah.
don't rob my identity and my belongings. Like you're not Sudanese enough. I am Sudanese enough for you. You are Sudanese enough.
Yeah.
You are. Like there's no manual instruction of how to become Sudanese person. If I don't like the smell of sandalia, then I don't like the smell of sandalia. It doesn't mean I'm less of a Sudanese woman than you, right?
Right.
And I love how you said when you went out, you realized that. So what is something you would say you want to change other than the system, the education system? What's something that really bothers you when I say Sudan?
Oh my God, where do I start? I think one of the things that I'm working on right now in my journey of self-discovery is to redefine how I want to carry Sudan with me. I feel like there's so many ways, and food is one way, music is one way, books is one way, literature is one way. But for me, it's also, I think it's like surgery, and it's like a very sensitive surgery where I have to remove certain tissues and certain tumors from things that I'm just like, okay, this I don't want, but I know this is still part of it. And when I think about that, I think about it in terms of like certain cultures, certain things that I've seen being done in Sudan, and nobody ever gave me a why as to why people are doing it, right? And it's very interconnected with community. And for example, when I first visited my grandma's house in Darfur, they had a very almost like her and her neighbors lived a way where their schedules meshed together, you know, and then at certain points they would all come in and they would have coffee together, they would have weather, you know, and they would play with it on the ground, they would, you know, and they would have days when they would like get someone's hair done and stuff like that. Like it was kind of work, they all worked together. And sometimes like when I look at that, just this scene, this scenario, I'm just like, what is with it? Why are you doing that? You know, and why is it like some people think of it as like superstition and bid'ah or all of these things, right? And almost like this is a part of us, right? Like this is and this is the part where I feel like is a Sudanese cultural Muslim kind of point of view, right? When then they want to kind of like shun this, or when people think of Zod and the tradition of Zod and how it is about, like to me, I think that's fascinating, and I would love to understand why it's being done and why it's being made. But unfortunately, I'm also in a situation where I can't just ask people who do it back home, right? So then I have to kind of like do my own research and kind of figure that one out. And one thing I've been learning is about how different cultures work hand in hand in terms of like the land, like the physical land, and spirituality and how it translates together, right? So weather is one of that. And if you like want to look into the science of it, it's more like geomancy, right? And then you kind of think of like, okay, there's like a certain level of like intuitive readings, and it's kind of a way where you can read for someone, give them an objective view of what's happening in their life, and reading and guidance, and give them guidance. And that is community connected too. So for me, in order to, instead of just being like, okay, I'm now gonna go and practice Zar and do it as if it's my own without understanding, I'm just gonna do it because other people did it. That's not kind of the way that I want to do it. I want to kind of learn it the way, like, okay, geomancy, there's like a certain level of like, oh, this means this means that, and if I read this, I can give you this kind of interpretation and stuff like that. And I want to carry that and say that, okay, this is what I used to do. This is what people, when they're in a hut sitting down drinking tea, like, this is something that I want to do in my practice, that I want to do for myself, and not for performance or not for anything else other than that. This is in my lineage and I think it's interesting and I'm going to do it. Yeah. Right? I think it's just about picking up the things that I think are interesting to me and make me feel this is home and carry it over. And that's just one example. Or like even the food and why certain foods are made a certain way. Like, I don't believe that everyone's supposed to be vegetarian or vegan or have all these diets. I'm like, I am from Sudan. I am born and like I eat meat. Like the place where I'm raised in, where my blood starts, people eat cows and meat and sheep and stuff like that, like, and lamb. So I'm not gonna just suddenly go into a vegetarian diet. My body isn't, gonna.
It's not work. It's not gonna work for your body.
No,
it's not gonna work. Not a Sudanese body.
I was born maybe here in the U.S. and I'm like in all of this kind of like capitalistic consumerism society. I get it, but in a way where like everything is so intentional about how we eat, how we clean the meat, how we cook it, how we preserve it. Everything is so intentional, and those are the things that I want to keep with me. And yeah, and just pass it through.
You know what you're doing? You're doing documentations of the history of Sudan. Because what's happening is you know how we have أغاني البنات, girls songs, and the suitcase songs, أغاني الحقيبة, right?
Yeah.
All of these somehow, like even أغاني البنات, the reason I said أغاني البنات is because you don't know who's the creator. It goes from a place to place and becomes a whole story, it becomes a full song, etc., right? But you don't actually know who did what and why was this said, etc., right? So what you're doing right now is tracing down why Zar reached Sudan. What are the origins? Like, what are the roots of Zar? Why was Zar invented? Why did they do it? Right? Because if you think of Zar, it's like a mix of a bit of rituals plus dancing. So how did it start? And if you think of about like the making up of news or like any propaganda, there is a reason to why. There's a structure to everything, how it's made. And I think in your brain, you're tracing down that structure to understand it and to practice it with meaning. Not to practice it because you were told to do that, because that's something that bothered you since you were born in Sudan. And that's something that the Sudanese people actually do intentionally. They follow each other. They follow the crowd, and it's very annoying to follow the crowd for people like us, because it does not make sense to follow without intentionally knowing what's happening. Right. So in my brain, like something I've been speaking about is like the people who are doctors and engineers, blah blah blah, then they're involved in politics. And I'm like, did you study this? The fact that you're a doctor, it means like you belong in the hospital treating a patient. Okay, you have political views, vote. Write an article. Have a discussion. You know what I mean? Change your career and study politics. But do not come with me with opinions to run a country. That's not how a country is that's not how it works. That's the common sense for me, right? Because I see people, and I don't mind that. I don't mind the whole community, the whole country coming in for a civil government. I just mind the fact that it's unstructured. And it gets out of their hand because they don't know the techniques and the manipulation, how things might go to. Because those are things that are being studied. mechanisms to those. And I cannot go right now and perform a surgery because I'm not a surgeon. So as a surgeon, why would you think you can run a country?
Absolutely.
Right? So it is the same thing for you when it comes to knowing the structure. Why, for example, when you talk about Wadi Azar, for example, how you make bakhur, right? How did they come
Right.
up with the ingredients? I always ask myself, like, this is very creative. How did they make asida? Who was the first person who made it and decided this is going to work for this weather and this community and this economic state? You know what I mean? It's brilliant. When you think of it, it's brilliant, right? So it's very important to trace down these and practice with conscious, intentionally knowing what you're doing and the roots of everything. And it's something
Absolutely.
I see you tracing. And this is Roa, this is important. This is important because you are finding the narrative, the truth. You're finding the truth and you're telling it and practicing it, right?
Yeah.
So the next time someone says, well, you're not Sudani enough, you'll be like, actually, I am. You know why? Because I know how Zar came in. This is, it's not what you think. Let me tell you. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
It's just beautiful. And what you said about like having other ways of doing it. Now, I just want to ask this for the sake of it, because we're both Sudanese. Do you think we'll go back? I'm sorry, I had to ask this.
No, I honestly, I think about that a lot. And I don't see it as a reality for at least maybe 30 years, something like that. Like, I don't see it anytime soon. And I feel like the only reason I'm even giving it 30 years with like maybe 30 years, like, and it's like a hopeful thing, because at the same time, I mean, we'll never know how things happen, but from patterns and cycles and how things are, right? It's going to take a lot to rebuild, but we are not even at the rebuilding stage. We're still in the destruction stage for me. And when I see that people with power won't stop until they get what they want. Right. And that has been a cycle for years. Yeah. For just so long.
It's been a cycle, Sudan. What do you think we did wrong, the Sudanese people? Right. I refuse the narrative of the victim. It's just a corrupted government. I think every one of us is responsible. That's how I see it, right?
Yeah.
And part of it is the pattern and following the mold and the system. But just saying, like, allowing someone to rule us for 30 years, what do you think we did wrong? And I always ask myself, what didn't I do? What was I supposed to do that I didn't do that as a Sudani person, as an individual?
Honestly, I feel like, well, I'll give you a two perspective. I think back in the day, if we go back, like right as we were getting out of colonization, I would say we believe that we, like, choosing Sudanese people over the Egyptians or the British was going to be better for us. That's one thing. I feel like we assumed that just because they're Sudanese, that they would treat us better. But what we failed to see was that these Sudanese people were being bred by the same system of oppression. So they were just going to perpetuate the same terror and the same bullshit over and over again. So that's one part of it. And the second part of it is that we are taught to stay quiet when things are wrong. Over and over again, it's drilled in us that if you see something wrong, that we are not supposed to say anything about it. That we are staying quiet because it's not our business, or we don't know the truth.
We don't question.
Don't question it. don't
We
question it.
don't question
And
our
that's
heroes, Roa.
yes. Oh my god. Oh my god. Yes.
We make a person a hero, and then we don't question them, and that hero deviates because that's the human nature,
Yes.
and we follow
Yes.
that. And that's stupid
Mm,
because it's not about the hero, it's not
yeah.
about us, it's about Sudan and creating a land and a country that is good, is safe to be living, a place for us to live
Yeah.
and feel safe and appreciated. And we didn't allow Sudan to give us, from the moment we gained independence, I don't think we allowed Sudan to give us anything. We
No,
just
we didn't.
the wound open somehow, right?
We did.
Yeah. And those
Absolutely.
who saw the truth left.
Yep.
And I'm not gonna lie, I do blame myself for leaving. But sometimes I think, because I believe in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, I wouldn't have done anything if I stayed, because I did not see that I'm Sudani enough, just like what you say. You only know that when you leave, right?
Yeah.
You leave and you're like, I could have done this back home, right?
Yeah. Absolutely. It's always hard having kind of like a distant relationship with home, but also knowing that you're tied to it, right? Like, it's not like, oh, you're just far removed for it flying. You're like, no, I'm still connected. Like, look at that rope is still tying me down to here. Like, but at the same time, seeing it how it is right now and seeing its potential, but not being able to get to that potential is it's so heartbreaking. But I think this is also part of the work. And this is kind of how I try to infuse myself with hope, is that the people before us, maybe not everyone, but they did fight for something. And even because before it was worse, I like to an extent, right? It was worse. It's worse now. You'll never know how bad it was, but they did fight for something at some point. My granddad was a political activist, and I don't agree with a lot of his political views. It is what it is, But I also know that he fought a lot for a better Sudan, over and over and over again. And I know also the people who fought so hard that at some point they had no option but to leave, right?
Yeah.
And we're seeing it even now with a lot of families who did decide to stay, and they said, why would we leave? But even within their conviction, there have still been removed because it wasn't up to them now. It's not about you staying your ground, because in the end, you're gonna be killed, right? So even people who wanted to stay in Khartoum and
I
not
think
leave.
being killed is the good thing, if the RSF found you, because there's more ways.
Right.
There's
Absolutely.
horrible story.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So I'm hopeful now, also knowing that there's enough people like you and me who are able to see this, and also able to see that this wasn't recent. We can see just how far this issue has been and how far back it goes, and also understand that whatever we're doing now is going to impact whatever comes next, right?
So we keep doing.
And we'll never know. And this is the part of the work where I feel like we might never be able to see its effect in our lifetimes, right?
But that's okay.
Yeah.
I don't mind.
Yeah.
As long as it has an effect, I want to keep doing it, right?
Absolutely.
I don't want to quit just because I want to see the effects, right? Because it's just not how things work.
Yeah.
But some of the people who fought for independence didn't live to have independence, right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
And that's how it is across the history. And that's not I don't think it's a problem for anyone who's working hard, right? I think the problem is is being censored or being fought back by Sudanese themselves for saying things for what they are, right? Like before, for being, I don't think we were the stubborn. I think they were stubborn.
Yeah.
They're the one who helped into the unrealistic um, Sudan, the unrealistic community that does not exist. Right? If someone
Yeah.
is, it's just such. I want everyone who's Sudani who is listening or watching this episode, and I hope it reached you all, is to just to sit down and remember one time when they challenged the pattern and they thought to themselves that does not make sense, and whether they eventually had to follow it or repel how it happened. I want you to sit down and write this story or think about it or speak it to your recorder in your phone, just or speak to your friends about it. Let's just start talking at least, and I know I know my loss for Sudan is not like yours, because I already established a home as here somewhere else, just like Roua. But something I told my friend, one of the people who left and who accused me over of giving up on Sudan and leaving. I said the difference between me leaving and you leaving is time. That's it.
Yeah.
That's it. I don't want you to think you're better because you stayed. You might be better in some sense, right? But the only difference between you and I is I saw it earlier. That's all. I saw it coming earlier, because I have said this to a lot of people and they said you crazy, right? And it's a desire, it's a nature in you to seek safety. What you just said, you didn't feel safe. You and I did not feel safe in Sudan. And when you think of it, the difference between the safety again and your safety, who are the people who left now, is time. That's all. I felt unsafe earlier than you. That's all. So it's important to start talking about these, to approach them. It's a hard conversation, and I really wish for Sudan people to acknowledge their denial, because we're not gonna move on before you do that. You people, we need to establish system to get our country back. And
Absolutely.
At this point, I agree with Roua, we might not get it in our lifetime. Maybe it will be for our kids or grandkids. Who knows what's going to happen? I pray for miracles every day, but I'm a realistic person. That's why I left, right? So
I got some work to do.
We have a lot of work to do. We have a lot of work to do, and just going from a lot of work to do, what is your next step right now, realistically? What are you going to do? Grow up. I know you're writing the book, you're doing a lot of things, but give me one thing you're focusing on next.
Wow. Okay. One thing I am currently working on is to find my power and in being able to stand my ground to handle what's happening right now.
Yes.
I think I've underestimated just how strong I am for a really long time.
Yes.
And now when shit hit the fan, right, I realize just how strong I am. And even though I get a couple hits then and now, but I've always gotten back up. Every single time I've gotten back up. So now I'm at a place in time where what I'm working on is to be able to take a hit and not fall. And I think this translates a lot into the work that I'm doing right now, because the self-discovery work that I'm doing and the writing that I'm doing, it's all about shedding all the layers that have been associated with who I am and who I thought I was and what people thought I should be, and finding who I am. And by finding myself and finding my voice, I'm able to speak out and finally talk about all the things that didn't work and on why these things aren't working, and speak about it and stand my ground about it without feeling like, oh, I don't deserve to say this, or I'm not, like, this isn't, like, now this is my narrative and my narrative will stay here. And I want, hopefully, inspire people to do the same, because a lot of the times we do want to fight, but realistically, we're not doing the work to even get ourselves up there, right? And I feel like a lot of the times people just assume that you're supposed to be a fighter just suddenly, without the training, without the work, doing the work every single day. And that's the work that I'm doing every single day. Every single day I am learning more, I'm writing more, I'm finding healthier ways to connect with Sudan. I'm finding ways that make me feel like I'm having fun, I'm enjoying this, I'm savoring this. Now I have a lot more appreciation to the things that I do, the way I live my life. I can't take it for granted, because now I know just how privileged I am too. Safety is a huge privilege that I didn't think much about, right? But now I just know just how great that is. So that's the work that I'm doing. I'm really focusing on myself right now, but not just for myself, because I know this is going to shine outward. But the process to get to it to shine outward is going to take some time. So this is the work that I'm doing.
The best answer ever. The best answer ever, right? And I'm gonna tie this to the podcast. Is sometimes I want to be consistent with posting the episodes, but at the same time, I'm not at the mental state. I'm tired, right? I'm strong. I know I am strong. I know this body took a lot and handled it, right? And I know that my mental health did the same, right? But at the same time, you need to take care of yourself. You need to know yourself, right? You need to write and save the writings for you and reread to discover who you are and what you are and what you want to bring to the table, right? Because right now, everything you bring to the table is important in the Sudani scene, right? So you cannot afford bringing ego. You cannot afford bringing previous colonialism mindsets. We cannot afford some sort, excuse my language, shit that was happening before, right? What we need right now is the truth, the right thing to do. And we need to move forward as a community towards that, right? And we cannot do that by thinking, oh, I'm smart enough, I can handle this, I'm a fighter, always done this. Okay, we know that. We all did it before. But please, take a moment. There's nothing selfish with taking a moment for yourself. That's why I love what you say. Take a moment. Do the work for you right now. So just what I said, to shine outwards and to give. To give, you need to give yourself. And I always give that example when my therapist long time ago asked me to write the 5 priorities in my life, and I wrote them, and she said, "Where is you?" I was like, "What do you mean?" She said, "Who's doing all this?" I said, "Me." And she said, "Why are you? Why is you not a priority?" And I was like, "What do you mean?" But again, that comes from sacrifice as a Sudani woman, because we're not looking at stuff as priority. So whether you're a woman or a man, whatever, in the Sudanese scene, please, just take care of yourself for now. Digest what's happening. Understand what responsibility you have not taken because you followed the pattern. Sit down and face them. No one is going to judge you right now. We're all in this boat together, right? Write them down, talk about them, talk to your friends so we can move on, and make some sort of future for this land. I don't know if Roua and I will go back. I don't know if this episode will last for years. I actually don't know if you're listening or watching this. But it's a plea, it's a plea from both of us. If you're Sudani who's watching this, do the work, please. Stop denial. See things for what they are. That's all I'm asking you to do. And I hope,
absolutely,
we get to go back.
Yeah, I hope so too.
This is a very interesting film.
Oh yeah,
it's
ups and downs, right?
But it's a good one. I don't think your film ended yet, just like many of. But I think for you, I told this to a lot of people. For you, like those special episodes. We don't see Netflix anymore, probably, or OT. But like it's a special episode that begins with finding yourself. And I think with from the way I imagine the film is you with the scene and the teacher telling you this, and then right away going back to the Netherlands because you have fulfilled your own prophecy, not the prophecy that you were told. Right? It's not France, it's Netherlands. I don't know. Same to me. Not gonna lie, I'm not a huge fan of France, to be honest. So no judgment. No judgment.
Yeah.
So
I think for me, I just wanted to learn French, and I didn't even end up learning French. I mean, I'm learning Spanish, so it's like completely.
It is a dream for me to learn French, and I live in Canada. I'm telling you, all the prestigious jobs, which not, and I no longer seek, but requires French, right? So I was like, oh, I wish. But I think in your film is just the fact that you were given, because we somehow draw a parallel with Will That 20, but you were giving a false prophecy and you didn't believe it.
Right.
You made your own, right? And you keep going for it. And just for everyone watching, that's a very hard thing to do. Travel alone, because you traveled alone, right? And you do all of this. And then to come in and out, that scene of in and out is very important. And I think it will be the first special episode. You doing all of that, going in and out, and bringing a lens. Was when you bring a character lens and think about, and them being disassociated from the scene, you and with your friends, because they're still where they are, and you have moved on. And you're like, didn't we talk about this 7 years ago? Oh, I want you guys, I wanted to see more, but there's nothing you can do about it. And then again, with the war, you decided to go back, etc. But now you're in self-discovery to see what you can give Sudan more, right? As a Sudani person, woman. I'm proud of you.
Thank you.
I'm honored to know you. Like, you are so inspiring. You have no idea. I cannot wait to see what you will do in the future. Like, I'll be your biggest fan. I know Roua. She was on my podcast.
Yeah.
We carry the podcast around.
Yes.
We're doing this together.
No, honestly, I feel exactly the same. Like, since I've like known about you and just seen your work, and I've been watching your podcast, and honestly so inspired, because I'm like, okay, someone's doing this, I can do this. Like, I feel like it's, like, and it's like someone from Sudan, someone's going through the same things that I'm going. I mean, it's not exactly, but I felt really motivated to be like, okay, I'm just gonna write, I'm just gonna see whatever it comes out, I'm not gonna put any pressure. But now all I have to do is get into the habit of doing, doing and let it out until. So I'm really inspired by the work that you do. I love it. I love your perspective that you're giving, because I think even just seeing how you put things together in terms of like a movie and scenes and the picture and putting it all together, I think is so inspiring. Because to me, I usually, when I like talk to someone or learn about something, I like to bring it and then be like, oh, this is similar to this, and then like all the places that I've been, and and just bring it together, and I'd be like, oh my god, this is just like this, and connect it. I can just love to see how you do that, and not thinking of like, oh my god, you're so like weird that all you talk about is how it's similar somewhere else. I'm like, but I just love seeing you do it and just being passionate about it.
Thank you.
It's so inspiring.
I thank you. I do believe that we have answers right in front of us. We just don't make the weird connection because we're like scared of being told we're weird, or scared of being simple. All these labels, they don't mean anything. What you need is the answers to your questions, your wonders, your most stupid like wonder in your, and sometimes I draw weird connections and like something is wrong with me. I was like, man, whatever. A lot of things are wrong with a lot of people. Don't question them. Who am I to question what is going on my brain? Might as well use it. You know what I mean? So I am really excited for you, and I really want to. I know we talked, her and I, about the podcast, right? So yeah, I'm excited for that. You better invite me if it's an interview podcast. I want to continue talking. You see, This is how you make opportunities. Everyone watch. You tell people to invite you to the podcast. You tell them to come to
Yeah,
the podcast.
exactly.
This is how you establish a foundation of a community. Don't be scared. Don't be
Absolutely.
scared.
Yes.
Go and do what you want to
Please,
do.
honestly.
Yes, yes.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yes. You'll be one of my first guests so that you even know that, like, okay, this is it.
Yes.
That is the sound.
Well, I'm a talkative, so I'm warning you to like prepare your water, tea, whatever. So I have a question for you. What do you think is the theme of this film, of this special episodes about you? What do you see?
I think the theme is transformation.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah.
No, I don't spoon feed this theme, but okay, you said it. Yes.
Yeah. No. Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I think it's finding yourself in the transformation. Because that's how you find yourself. The only truth in this world, people. I mean, not the only two. Change and death.
Yeah.
Change and death. Nothing is gonna remain the same. If you remain the same, you're dying. As simple as that.
Yeah.
Right? And
Yes.
you see it across a lot of things, films, books, countries, right? Sudan now is different. And I'm very proud of the this generation of Sudan people who are making the podcast and new music, right? Because we held into music for so long.
Yeah.
We kept repeating it, and then new people, new generations coming up with new music, and I really love it. I don't know a lot of it, but what I know is good because I have all the youngest siblings. But yeah, transformation is a huge theme, and I cannot wait for your next transformation. Okay, what do you want to name your film?
Oh. That's a hard one.
بالعربي ولا بالإنجليزي؟
I was like, oh my god. Oh, that's a really hard one. Let's see.
You can send it to me later.
Yeah, I was like, oh my god.
It's fine. So, and like digest the conversation and send it to me later. I'll just edit this part.
Yeah. No worries.
All right. Okay, Rob. This was a pleasure, an honor. I felt like I'm talking to an old friend. But as I started this conversation and this podcast episode, I just know, I don't know, 2 weeks now. I don't know. It's been like really, and this is the first time we had a long talk, right? And our talk did start with me recommending You Will Die at 20 and asking her to give me feedback because that's how much I love You Will Die at 20. That's how much I have. I'm a huge fan of Abjad Abu Laila, right? Ustaz Abjad Abu Laila. I don't want to like take that away. So I am honored to have you. I'm thrilled for your future, right? I'm happy that we're walking this path together because I know we're not in the same country. Like North America. But again, I wish to see you in person. I don't know how we're gonna make it, but regardless, I feel like we're walking this path together. And I'm happy for it to find more people like me, to find Sudani community, like people in the scene, right? So thank you for being here today.
Thank you for having me. This was incredible. I'm so glad we did this. Honestly, such a pleasure.
Thank you.
An honor to be on your podcast.
Thank you everyone for tuning in, listening, or watching. I'll see you next time, the next episode with the Lemon Narrative with Sapri. Bye.